The air in the royal court hung heavy, thick with unspoken judgment. A man, a high-ranking servant, knelt before the king, his face ashen, his shoulders hunched in despair. The king's decree had just been uttered, a sentence that echoed like a death knell. Sell him, and his wife, and children, and all that he has, and payment be made. His crime? An impossible debt. 10,000 talents. To truly grasp the magnitude of this sum, imagine a debt so vast it would take centuries of labor to repay, an amount equivalent to the annual revenue of an entire region, perhaps even a small kingdom. It was an astronomical, unimaginable sum, far beyond the servant's means, far beyond anyone's ability to earn. He was bankrupt, utterly ruined, and everything he held dear was about to be stripped away. The weight of this truth pressed down on him, suffocating him. He could feel the eyes of the court upon him, a mixture of pity and grim recognition. This was the end. But in a moment of desperate clarity, with a last surge of hope, he fell to the ground, his voice cracking as he pleaded, "Lord, have patience with me, and I will repay you all." He knew it was a hollow promise, an impossibility, yet he clung to the slimmest thread of mercy. And then something extraordinary happened. The king, known for his justice, but also for a deep well of compassion, looked at the wretched man. He saw not just the debt, but the utter hopelessness, the complete destitution. His heart was moved. It wasn't a temporary reprieve he granted, not a partial discount, but something far more profound. With a wave of his hand, a quiet word that carried more power than any thunderclap, the king declared, "You are forgiven. The entire debt canceled." Imagine the silence that fell. Then the servant's head slowly lifted. His eyes, once glazed with terror, widened in disbelief. 10,000 talents, gone, just like that. The chains of a lifetime of debt, the specter of slavery for his family, all vanished in an instant. A wave of profound relief, an overwhelming rush of gratitude surely washed over him. He was free, truly, miraculously free. The servant rose, perhaps still trembling, perhaps even dizzy with the sudden lightness that replaced the crushing burden. He walked out of the royal presence a new man, unburdened, given a second chance that transcended all logic and expectation. The king's mercy had been boundless, extravagant, and utterly complete. One might expect that such a transformative experience, such an overwhelming act of grace, would forever change him. That his heart, having known such profound forgiveness, would overflow with generosity and understanding for others. But, tragically, that was not the case. No sooner had this servant stepped from the king's court than he encountered a fellow servant. This man owed him money. Not 10,000 talents, not even 1 talent, a mere 100 denarii. To put that in perspective, 100 denarii was roughly 100 days' wages for a common laborer, a manageable sum, certainly not a king's ransom. As soon as he saw his debtor, the forgiven servant seized him, shaking him, demanding, "Pay me what you owe." The fellow servant, mirroring the very plea the unforgiving servant had made moments earlier, fell to his knees. "Have patience with me," he begged, "and I will repay you." The words hung in the air, a stark, almost painful echo. Yet the man who had just been released from an impossible burden showed no patience, no understanding, no mercy whatsoever. His heart, so recently softened by royal compassion, had hardened instantly. He refused to listen. He refused to wait. Instead, he had his fellow servant thrown into prison, where he would remain until the small debt was paid in full. Other servants witnessed this shocking display. They had seen the first servant's deliverance, heard the king's generous decree, and now they watched in dismay as he exacted such ruthless judgment on another. Deeply distressed by what they saw, they went and reported the entire incident to the king. When the king heard, his benevolence turned to righteous indignation. He summoned the unforgiving servant, and the man likely returned to the royal presence with a sickening dread, knowing his actions had been exposed. The king's voice, once gentle in its mercy, was now stern. "You wicked servant," he thundered, "I forgave you all that tremendous debt because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you?" It was a question that pierced through any pretense, any excuse. The contrast was stark, undeniable. The immeasurable forgiveness he had received stood in glaring opposition to the petty, unyielding cruelty he had shown. And because he had refused to extend the mercy he himself had so desperately needed and received, the king, in his just wrath, handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay all that he owed, that impossible 10,000 talents. This powerful parable, told by Jesus, serves as a profound warning and a beautiful invitation. We, like that first servant, owe God an impossible debt, the debt of our sins, our failings, our turning away from His perfect will. It is a debt we can never repay, a chasm we cannot bridge on our own. Yet, through His incredible grace, through the sacrifice of His Son, Jesus, God has completely forgiven that debt. He has canceled it, freeing us from the eternal consequences of our sin. But the story doesn't end there. It challenges us to reflect deeply. If God, in His infinite mercy, has forgiven us so much, how can we possibly withhold forgiveness from others for their comparatively minor offenses against us? When we cling to resentment, when we nurse grudges, when we refuse to release those who have wronged us, we deny the very grace that has been so freely given to us. The king's displeasure reminds us that true forgiveness is not just a transaction, it's a transformation. It's an embrace of the mercy we've received, reflected back into the world. It frees us from the bitterness that traps our own hearts and allows us to live in the expansive freedom of God's love. So, as you go about your day, consider, who might you be holding captive in the prison of unforgiveness? Is there someone whose small debt, a slight, a hurtful word, a perceived wrong, is weighing heavily on your heart? Perhaps it's time to remember the 10,000 talents, to remember the boundless mercy you've been shown, and to extend that same liberating grace to another. What are your thoughts on this powerful parable? How has understanding God's forgiveness helped you to forgive others? Share your reflections in the comments below. We'd love to hear your insights. And if this message resonated with you, please consider giving this video a like, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and may your heart be a vessel of God's generous mercy.